Another story coming out of Capitol Hill and a topic that has gained momentum in recent months. A live picture right now at the United States Capitol as banning single stock trading by members of Congress. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent now seems to be in favor of the idea. For more on the issue, we're going to be joined right now by LiveNOW's very own Andrew Kraft, speaking with a member of the House who's sponsoring legislation to do just that. Here's the conversation with Rhode Island Representative Seth Magaziner on that topic here on Live Now.
Look there at the U.S. Capitol as we continue to cover all things happening there whilst members are on recess. I want to follow up to a story we've been covering about an effort afoot there, bipartisan, to ban individual stock trades among members of Congress. One of the co-sponsors, really the lead sponsor of this, the Trust Act, is Democratic Congressman from Rhode Island, Seth Magaziner. He joins me. Congressman, good to see you, and thanks for being with us here. So I have to ask, I think this is so interesting. This doesn't really have to do with the American people. This is an effort to check yourself and check you and your colleagues. This is somewhat of an internal check in that respect here. It fizzled last Congress. Is it gaining traction this time around?
I think we are gaining traction because the American people want this. The average Rhode Islander, the average American who I speak to understands that when members of Congress are trading stocks and profiting off of the same companies and industries that we vote to regulate, there's a conflict of interest there. And it's unfair for two reasons. Number one, as members of Congress, we have access to all kinds of inside information that the average member of the public doesn't. So if we trade stocks, we are at an advantage over anybody else who's participating in the market. That's just unfair. But second, and more importantly, when members of Congress vote on legislation, on bills, we should be voting based on what we think is the best thing for the American people, not what is the best thing for our investment portfolios. And so I think the average person understands that this actually does impact them, because if members of Congress are making decisions based on their own personal financial self-interest, then they are not prioritizing their constituents. And that's why we need this reform.
So I said it is bipartisan in nature, but there are some holdouts on both sides of the aisle, some people who don't support this, some of your colleagues. What's your argument to persuade them to come on board here? And what are their arguments against it?
Well, trust in Congress is at an all-time low, and if we want to restore the people's faith in government, we need to clean up Washington, and that includes cleaning up our own house. One of the things that I hear, particularly from some of my Democratic colleagues, is, hey, why are we focused on banning members of Congress from trading stocks when we also see corruption coming out of the White House? The president selling cryptocurrency to investors in a very opaque way, or the Supreme Court, where members of the Supreme Court have been accepting gifts from parties that have business in front of the court. Why are we focused on Congress? And my answer to them is, we as Democrats will have more credibility to call out the corruption in the executive and judicial branch if we show that we're willing to clean up our own house. And then to my Republican colleagues, what I would say is, listen, Donald Trump has actually come out in favor of a stock trading ban for members of Congress. This is something that, as you say, has bipartisan support. I've been working closely with Chip Roy. He's the Republican co-lead on my bill. He's been working on this for a long time. And there's broad bipartisan support across the American public for banning members of Congress from trading stocks. We just got to get it done.
So logistically, how would the piece of legislation work? If you're a member like yourself, would you, say you have a massive portfolio, would you put that in a blind trust? Would you freeze those assets? Would you handle them with an independent outside advisor? How would it work?
Yeah. So there are a couple of different bills that have been introduced to ban stock trading by members that deal with it in different ways. There's a bill that deals with it by just requiring members to sell and reinvest in mutual funds, to sell their individual holdings and reinvest in mutual funds. The Trust in Congress Act that I lead requires members to put their assets into a blind trust. What we're doing now is a bipartisan group of us that have introduced stock trading ban bills are working together to try to negotiate a single consensus version that can earn the support of enough of the House chamber to pass and also have some real teeth to it. And so I'm optimistic that in the next couple of weeks, we will announce a deal on a consensus bill, and we'll be able to share the details of what's in it and how it will work mechanically. But most importantly, we'll hopefully have a version that has broad enough support across the ideological spectrum on this Congress.
So, as you know, obviously GOP leadership decides what gets to come to the floor. Do you have Speaker Johnson's support to get it to the floor?
Well, Speaker Johnson has voiced support for the general concept, but he has yet to commit to bringing a bill to the floor. And that's what we need. Because at this point, Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, has come out in favor of this. Donald Trump has come out in favor of it. But the ball is really going to be in Mike Johnson's court. He controls access to the floor, what bills get to the floor, as you pointed out. And ultimately, this is a decision that only he can make. All I can say is, look, the American people want this, and I'm sure there are some individual members who are making money off the stock market who are in the Speaker's ear saying, please don't bring this bill to the floor. But the Speaker and the Republican majority have to make the decision. Are they going to put the American people first, or are they going to put their own self-interest first?
Congressman, while I have you, I just want to talk about really the main political story of the last 2 weeks, the issue of redistricting. We heard from California Democrats today, led by Governor Gavin Newsom, and his mantra throughout this whole debate has been, we want to fight fire with fire, to what Republicans in the state of Texas are doing. Your Republican colleague from California, Kevin Kiley, has proposed a piece of legislation that would ban mid-decade redistricting. Do you think that's going to gain any traction amongst your Democratic colleagues here, to wait for the census to work this all out, to prevent states like Texas from doing this mid-decade? Would you support that?
Yes, listen, the voters should pick their elected officials, not the other way around. And so I think that Democrats, by and large, support a ban on mid-census redistricting. Democrats would also support independent commissions to take the power to draw these maps out of the hands of the politicians. The problem is Democrats are not going to unilaterally disarm. And if Republicans in Texas or anywhere else are going to pull these kinds of tricks to grab power, then, as Governor Newsom said, Democrats are going to have to fight fire with fire. But would Democrats agree to a deal to ban mid-district redistricting on both sides, or to require independent commissions on both sides? Yes, we would. And I think so far that's been a fundamental difference between the two parties, is that Democrats have been supporting these reforms for years, and I imagine that we will today, but it's got to be bipartisan. Just like our stock trading bill, this only happens if there's buy-in on both sides.
Do you think it's wise, though, for Democrats to expend this political capital on the issue of redistricting, or should they focus their efforts elsewhere? Is this a good use of their time and resources? I mean, should Texas state Democrats get back to Austin to make quorum, do you think?
Well, I think it's a bad use of the Republican majority's time to be trying to play these games with redistricting. How about instead spending time on the issues that matter to the American people, lowering costs, expanding access to affordable health care, strengthening our national security, focus on the things that people actually care about. But again, I think as far as myself and most Democrats are concerned, we would like to be done with this whole conversation and have both sides agree we're not going to have these kinds of partisan gerrymandering games. But as long as the Republicans in Texas are moving forward, we are not going to unilaterally disarm on the Democratic side.
And lastly, and last topic, obviously this big summit happening tomorrow in Anchorage, Alaska, between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. If you could offer any advice to President Trump, what should he do? What should he know going into the summit tomorrow? And what do you want to see out of it?
He should know that Vladimir Putin cannot be trusted, that he started this war by invading Ukraine, an ally of the United States. And while we all want peace, there have to be conditions that ensure that Putin does not come out of this emboldened to break whatever agreement is reached and invade other countries going forward. Putin cannot be rewarded for bad behavior. And so my message to Donald Trump is beware of Vladimir Putin. He cannot be trusted. Yes, we should try to achieve peace, but we also have to be clear-eyed about the fact that we are dealing with someone who is not trustworthy.
Should we even be meeting with Putin right now, especially on U.S. soil? The premise of the meeting itself, do you agree with that?
You know, my view has been that there can only be a real negotiation if the Ukrainians sign off. You know, this is their country that has been invaded, is their land that has been seized by Putin. It's their cities that are being bombed, and they have to be at the table. Look, I don't think there's anything wrong with talking to both sides to try to bring them together to end the war, but the Ukrainians have to be front and center on this because ultimately it's their country that's been invaded.
All right, Congressman, thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you for having me.
All right, thank you so much for that conversation. Of course, you can catch that all live coverage of this Trump-Putin summit beginning tomorrow at 5 a.m. Eastern. We'll take you throughout the day the ramifications it has on a geopolitical scale. What we learn, as you heard there from the representative from Rhode Island, saying that Putin cannot be trusted. We'll see what happens. We heard President Trump allude to the fact that this is a chess match. He will learn potentially right away within the first 2 minutes if Putin is there for peace to make a deal. We'll have that full here on Live Now from Fox all tomorrow. And I do want to just kind of circle back to what that first question was about. This, a post on social media from the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying, "I'm pushing for a ban on single stock trading in Congress. The American people deserve better than politicians with hedge fund level returns. The public service should be about serving the people, not getting rich." So an interesting concept. We'll see if it gets to the floor for a vote. Now, obviously, that has to go through Speaker Mike Johnson's office first. But we'll keep an eye on that here on Live Now from Fox. Until then, we'll sign away for a quick 2-minute break.